right, good evening. Good to see you. Boy, that window makes me look really nice sitting here. You should see this picture. I look almost angelic. It's pretty nice. So good evening to our online family. Glad that you're there. Thank you for being with us. And good evening, everyone here in person. I'm glad that you're here. Tonight, I'm thankful that you're here because tonight is Dollar Night at the fair. Have all of you guys been to the Hunt County Fair? Okay. Well, tonight is Dollar Night, so Jeff, you could go live large, just yourself, and yeah, I think for an adult it's $10 to get in, and then everything's $1. Oh, so it's the reverse happy hour. You pay more to get in early, or okay. I haven't been out to the fair in a long time since it kind of took this new look. It looks nice. So anyway, well, it's good to see you guys. I hope that you're having a good week. The weather's been awesome. You know, I've mentioned on many occasions the wind. Here's a fact that won't do you any good, but I'm going to tell you what it is. April is the most windy. This April is the most windy April on history, on record. So if you've wondered, like me, who keeps leaving the fan on, it has made an impression. So a few things to remember we're praying about. Had lunch with Brother Buddy today, and we had a great visit, and he was in good spirits. He heads back to Tyler the first of next week for follow-ups and evaluations on where to go from there. Brother Ron's grandson is home from children, so thank the Lord for that. And Brother Kelly is doing well. I don't think we've reached the place where I can start making pirate jokes, but we'll get there soon. With his left leg injured and his right eye patched up, you can see, right? We're those kinds of friends too, so. And then, let's see, Randy's grandmother is doing better. I did get a note. Miss Priscilla has been put into the hospital and is undergoing evaluation right now. So, and then Jared Donnerworth's family, they unexpectedly lost a brother-in-law, and then now Jared's father, who was diagnosed with cancer doesn't seem that long ago, is not doing well. He's in a Houston hospital at this time, so we want to remember them. Brian Goodwin's father is still in the hospital. They were able to go in and insert a stent and address a significant issue. Now, it's an interesting thing because they go in and address this blockage, and now his blood pressure is low. So they're working through that, but he's stable and everything. So we thank the Lord for that too. So just continue to pray and trust the Lord. So Sunday, let me ask you, any questions? Good evening, buddy. Good to see you online. Jason, good to see you out in the land of New Mexico. Any insights, questions that you may have had from Sunday's message? As we did an introduction on the road to Emmaus. Questions, cries of outrage, fits of... Do you have any questions? Seven and a half, give or take. I mean, I'm not really up on my stadia measurements right now, so. And that would be downhill from Jerusalem. So, okay, well let's go ahead. I've got a couple of things I want to spend a couple of minutes with. So does someone remember the two items that I mentioned Emmaus was known for in that time and then prior to that time? There were two things I mentioned on Sunday. Does anyone remember? Emmaus was known for? Yeah. Hot Springs. Now, Ronnie, this will interest you. I went to the masseuse yesterday, and I got my shoulder worked on, and I am throwing like a champ. That's what I'm talking about. Throwing the heat. So we're ready to go. Yes, it was a place with springs of medicinal value. So that was good. Anyone remember the other one? What's that? Yes. It temporarily housed the Ark of the Covenant some 1,000 years earlier. Now, does that make your head do a flip when you hear that? Oh, yeah, this little town, the Ark was there 1,000 years before this. If you ever get the opportunity to go overseas, and I hope that you will make that opportunity, and you get to go to these ancient places, and you realize how old's our nation? I don't know, what is it? It's not 300. That's way over the top. But that's a twinkling in the eye compared to, this city housed the Ark of the Covenant 1,000 years before Jesus. It's hard to believe, right? So we met a disciple. Let me ask this question. This is free, it won't cost you extra. What's the difference between an apostle and a disciple? Apostle has seen Christ and witnessed Christ's ministry personally. And they are, now let me ask you this, how many apostles are there? There were 12, and then what? There were 11, and then there were 12, because they cast lots and they brought Matthias in. And then what happened then? Anybody remember? Yeah, you got this little cat named Saul. So it's a uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one of the distinctives of the apostles is they were called by Christ. So when we look at Matthias, he doesn't meet that qualification. And when you look at, there's Matthias and there's Paul. Well, Paul did see Christ and he was called by Christ. So that's Paul's claim to apostleship that Matthias didn't have. So I don't know. Maybe I can have coffee with Matthias and see how that sat with him. But we do know that. Well, let me back up. Traditional historical records tell us that Matthias lived his entire life in faith and actually did give his life as a martyr for the faith. So yeah. So we meet this man Cleophas, who is known to be the brother of Joseph, the husband of Mary, the stepfather to Jesus. Now let me ask you this question. Does being related to Jesus make any difference in his believability? Here you've got his uncle. And we have the silent years when Jesus was growing up. We don't have a lot, Jesus grew up and all those things, right? So would being your uncle give you more credibility? Think about it. If you have a nephew and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm the Messiah," you go, "Oh, of course you are." Of course my nephew's the Messiah. Would that give more believability? I mean, there's not a right or wrong answer. You don't think? Aren't we? Yeah. We probably don't say it at Thanksgiving. We probably don't go, pfft. But on the ride home, did you hear? Did you hear what your knucklehead nephew said? Yeah. So, I don't know if it would be a benefit or not a benefit, but we see that he had a great deal of relationship with Jesus and with his ministry himself. along with his family. What are some of the events that would either positively or negatively affect him as he was watching Jesus grow up? We don't have a lot, truthfully, as far as what happened in Jesus's pre-ministry life. But would there be things that might have occurred that he goes, "Wow, there's something."
Well, we do know that when he was young, he was studying pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like very skilled.
Mm-hmm.
He would have to have some kind of understanding of Jesus. Some things that weren't all.
Yeah. Jesus always blew the curve out at Hebrew school. Yeah. Because, like I said, this is all just mind vitamins because we don't really know, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he grew up like Hebrew boys, and sure. One of the interesting things, is there anyone in your life that still sees you the way you used to be? Sometimes our siblings always see us as when we were younger, or maybe we treat them that way. Now, one of the challenges, like in ministry, is if you go to a church and you serve there, like as a student minister. When I went to Dixon, I was young in the faith. I was young all the way around. Spent 12 years there, but there were those who never saw me any differently than who I was 12 years earlier. They just have a hard time transitioning to who you've become. And sometimes as parents, if we're not careful, we can wrestle with that. So let's go ahead. So we know that he was the father of the 2 apostles and a grandfather of 2 other apostles. So he's vested in Jesus' ministry. History says that he was personally a disciple of Jesus, and the Christian tradition tells us that he was martyred for his faith by Jewish leaders. Again, let me just drive this nail a little bit further, if I may. When the world, let me make sure I didn't miss something here. When the world talks about whether or not the accounts of the resurrection are true, I think one of the greatest evidences is the number of people throughout history have given their lives for their faith. Especially now, as it radiates out as we get further and further from the Genesis. But in that day, here's a man who has 4 family members in the top 12. Now, if there were a conspiracy, you say, well, maybe the 12 didn't know. Maybe it was just Peter, James, and John. Well, he had one in there too. It's just very difficult for me when people just want to just dismiss, because I know it sounds incredible. I know it sounds unbelievable because we're not resurrecting every day. But if this was going to be one of history's mysteries, I love that there's a show right now, I think it is History's Mysteries, and they spend an entire hour coming to no conclusion. They give you 3 or 4 scenarios. Battery. Well, I put new ones in it. Yeah, but I won't be for long. Thank you, Jeff. Right.
The sheer volume of people that witnessed and passed it on were believable enough, something that's really right
Right.
and unbelievable. But that it works the same way. The sheer volume that it would have come out.
Yes. Somewhere, sometime, somehow, for some reason.
For dealing with is really a conspiracy theory. I
Yeah.
also believe that because I don't believe
Right. And okay, anyway, so that didn't cost you anything extra. So we see this man, his family is highly vested in the ministry of Jesus. He was a follower of Jesus. He looked at Jesus as a Messiah, a person of change, and things didn't really go the way they had expected. So I'm going to bump down here because I really want to talk about this first. Perception. So let me ask this question. What are some of the misconceptions of modern people in what they think about Jesus and his redemption? What do you believe to be some of the misconceptions about Jesus and what redemption means? The validity of the Bible. Why do you feel the validity of the Bible is debated? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I remember as a very young child, and we have a teacher of, what grade do you teach, ma'am? Yeah. Okay. I was in elementary school, so I was in that ground, right? When my teacher was teaching us about envelopment, the Earth's crust's envelopment, where, well, I want you to know, as a kindergarten to fifth grader, that was not right. That is obvious. You know why? Because I had never seen it. What do you mean that the Earth's crust meets and then one part goes under the other part? I can remember I was emphatic. Because I hadn't seen it, right? But it's an interesting thing. What we perceive and what we believe is 9/10 our reality, and it's interesting the things that we're willing to go to war for. This well, no, I'm going to tell you what, it was before fifth grade, because my car accident happened when I was in fifth grade, so, but yeah, don't listen here, man. Don't you try and sell me this voodoo of envelopment, which we all know is absolutely true. But what are some of the misconceptions today? Yes, the Bible isn't really even a good history book. I had a question yesterday. They said, well, human authors, true. Well, is it kind of like fishing stories? And I said, well, what does that mean? He says, well, you've got a person, you've got their personality, and maybe things change a little bit the further you get away from the event. I said, okay. I said, I hear what you're saying. I said, the thing about a fisherman's tale is this, is that fish may grow longer the more times he tells it. But what is the one thing about that fish every time he tells that story? He goes, well, it's a lie. And I go, so if you allow yourself to go down that path and you go, well, maybe Paul embellished a little. Well, the problem with that is an embellishment is a lie, or at least an untruth. And the person goes, oh, well, God's word is truth. I said, yeah, you can't. You start down that path. So Yeah, it's, what else? What are some other misconceptions or misunderstandings of modern day peoples, even modern day Christians perhaps, about Jesus and his redemption? Yeah, he's a good teacher. Hey man, he's not Billy Graham, but yeah. Now see, that's all on the Aggie. I mean, that hit him right in the worst place, right in his hands. Yeah. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find any of the major religions that won't give Jesus at least teaching credit. But when he talks about being God, that's where the problem starts to rise. There's one God, Allah. There's a plethora of gods. It's problematic. Yeah. He's a good teacher, but what else? Right. Yeah. That is a narrow-minded, bigoted, judgmental thing. When Jesus says, I'm the only way. And I've said it before and I will say it again. My job would be a lot easier if there were more roads to heaven than one. Oh, well, okay, sure, yeah, Yes. Well, I've heard people go, listen. Jesus carried that ball 99 yards and you've got to carry it that last yard. Now that sounds really good. It's just biblically not true. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be easy, Anyway, any others? One of the things I see a lot of is they want Jesus and his redemption to be a la carte. I want it for what I need, but I don't want it for what it might ask of me. I posted something on Facebook, perhaps you saw it. Far often people focus more on what they think they'll have to give up in the ignorance of what they will gain. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a younger man, my thought was to be a Christian meant I had to give up everything. And I have received more countless times over than I ever gave up. It's a misconception, right? Or that, Jesus is this celestial butler. So the concept of redemption in the time of the apostles and the disciples, for many of the Jews, meant a conquering, all-powerful Messiah would come and lead them to freedom. Now, their Messiah was not a spiritual Messiah. Why do you think they would not be looking for a spiritual Messiah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. We've probably all experienced somewhere where something that was an activity became a tradition and then it got elevated to sacred cow. I remember the night an evangelist walked on top of the communion table at Park Street Baptist Church because the platform was the same height. And this cat was talking about idols. I think it was, I'm looking right at him. And he's walking and he's getting it. And he steps right up on top of that thing. And I'm surprised, now, even today, if you ask me, should you do that? Well, he made his point, but still. So why would the Jews not be looking for a spiritual Messiah? Yes. Because the Jews suffer. You don't want to, if you suffer, you don't necessarily see your Messiah as what? Suffering. Your Messiah, what? Is a liberator. Yeah. What else? That's a good point. What else? Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, man, we've got the law, we got the temple, we got sacrifices. We're good. Yeah, we just need someone to set us free from these Roman, tyranny. We've got it. Now, what's amazing is if you ever was going to be miserable, living under the law would have been miserable. Well, yeah, what's a number? And, man, it would have been miserable. Can we just all agree having to do regular sacrifice would have been miserable? Anywho, but yeah, in their minds, the spiritual aspect of life, they were checking all the boxes, kind of. In fact, they were doing so good, they were adding boxes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's interesting because, as a sanguine, I'm not a type A. I'm not a big list guy, but I've got enough. There's something about checking off a list that does something for me. I make a little list when we go shopping, and it's got little bubbles, and I can touch it and it goes off. So under the law, there was a sense of accomplishment when you go, okay, as I understand this, the Lord wants this, 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 and this, and I did all that. Yeah, there is that, and we could still have that today. But on the flip side, there was the misery of the judgmentalism, because it wasn't just that you checked the box. It could be, how brightly did you check the box? How often do you check the box? For whom did you check the box? So yes, it wasn't all misery, but well, can I just bring it to now? Have you ever met someone who was just religiously irritating? I mean, I've got brothers and sisters in the faith, and I love them, but man. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yes. Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And they're just like human beings today. They would have these seasons where they're really passionate, and that passion begins to wane for various reasons, and then they slip out here, and God goes, we need to repent, or judgment's coming. And like typical human beings, and then God brings judgment, and then things change. So there we can agree that just as there was misconception of Jesus in his time, there's still misconception, because what redemption is on God's concept can be very, very different than what it is in man's concept as we try to interpret it and things. So we have to be careful there. Cleophas could not fathom the events of that morning. So we have no reason to believe or to think that Cleophas, A, saw Jesus, B, went to the empty tomb. So, one of the things when I had the privilege of going there, I tried to think through these things. So if you could picture with me, here's the old city, right? Now I'm a Garden Tomb guy. I'm not going to fight over it. I'm not going to break fellowship over it, but I'm a Garden Tomb guy. So if you have the city of Jerusalem, and that we'll call this north and this south, the Garden Tomb would be to the northeast, and the upper room would be down here to the southwest. Now there would be two ways you could get there. Well, three ways. You could go east around the large portion of the city. You could go to the west, which is a shorter walk, or you could take the shortest walk, which would be through the city. Now, why would they not necessarily want to go through the city? Traffic, yeah, red lights, man, they're killing me. Yeah, well, yes, because, the city wakes up early because, they work. So, yes, there would have been, What else? Why else would going through the city may have been problematic? There may have been people looking for them. Yeah. You have to remember, they don't know, does this stop with Jesus? Are they going to round us all up? I mean, yeah. Yeah, they're going to clean sweep us because, are they, anyway. So they would have taken one of the two routes, and in my mind, they take the westerly route and they come around, and it's a pretty good hoof to get there. And I have, in my righteous imagination, I picture these ladies, they've been waiting all weekend to get back and to minister. And at first light, I mean, as early as they could see, I picture them going. And when they get there, we know the account that's given to us. And they go back and they report what's going on, and others go to look and see. But, where this man was, where Cleophas was he in the upper room for the Last Supper? I don't know. It's not recorded. But let me just hypothetical, my thinking. If you have two sons and two grandsons who are in the close ministry team of Jesus, you might be sitting in that room. I don't know, maybe. But when we look at Cleophas and his travel companion, what they learned about the events of the day may have been hard to believe. I mean, we mentioned that on Sunday. I just have this real compassion, and I don't know why right now, about these poor people. I look at them, and I have to admit, there's times when I've been judgmental, and you're like, what do you mean you can't believe? But this would have been, it's a once in history event. It's a once in history event. And they didn't have the forensics. They didn't have the mass communication. I mean, are they getting it like sixth or seventh time over? And we got humans involved. I mean, it would have been challenging. And so we see there was a misconception of what redemption really was going to look like, what the goals of redemption would be, and now this person that they had invested so much in is murdered. And that changes everything. It changes everything. Cleophas had a very difficult time in receiving the information that was available at that time and receiving it in faith. Now, what is the difference between you and I as believers and him as a believer? What is the most significant difference? When it comes to the study of, the acceptance of, and the application of biblical teaching, or let me think through this, of godly concepts, precepts, because biblical, they didn't have the New Testament. Okay, his faith will become sight. Spoiler alert. But what do you and I possess that he did not possess? We do. We have the privilege of 20/20 hindsight in history. That's true too. The Holy Spirit. I think at times all of us can underestimate the power and the purpose of the Holy Spirit. His Spirit bears witness with our spirit. And this disciple didn't have it. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. We'll say goodnight.